I am Minamoto no Yoritomo, the first shogun of Japan and founder of the Kamakura Shogunate. My name may have echoed through the centuries, but my journey began in fire, blood, and exile. I was born in 1147 into the proud and powerful Minamoto clan, descendants of Emperor Seiwa himself. My father, Minamoto no Yoshitsune, was a brave warrior, but fate was cruel. When I was just a boy, he was defeated in the Heiji rebellion by our bitter rivals, the Taira clan. He was killed and I, a mere child, was spared only by the mercy of Taira no Kayamori, who chose exile over death for me. I was sent to Aizu, far from the courts of Kyoto, stripped of power but not of purpose. For 20 years I lived in the shadows, waiting. I watched the Taira rise, bloated with wealth and pride, tightening their grip on the imperial court. But the Minamoto spirit does not die in silence. In 1180 the call came. My half-brother Prince Monchūjo, resentful of Taira dominance, urged us to rise. That was all I needed. I raised my banner in rebellion, and with the support of loyal samurai, many of whom had long grown weary of Taira arrogance, I led our clan back into war. The Genpei War began. It was a long and bloody struggle, but I knew victory would not come by sword alone. While my cousin Yashinaka fought recklessly in the capital, I stayed in Kamakura, building something greater than a battlefield triumph. I was laying the foundation of rule. I established a base of governance in the east, far from the old capital's politics. In Kamakura, I set up my own government, organized land rights, rewarded loyal vassals, and created a system where military men, samurai, held power, not just court nobles. This was not a rebellion. It was a new order. My half-brother, Minamoto no Yoshitsune, was a brilliant commander. He crushed the Taira at Ichi-no-Tani and then at Dan-no-Ura in 1185, ending their rule. But talent does not excuse betrayal. He defied my authority, acted without orders, and grew dangerously popular. I could not allow division in our ranks. With a heavy heart, I declared him an outlaw. He died on the run, and history remembers him kindly. But leadership demands hard choices, not ballads. I was not born to power. I took it, built it, and forged a new path for my nation. I am Minamoto no Yoritomo, exile turned shogun, builder of samurai rule.
Minamoto no Yoritomo's reign marked a decisive transformation in the governance of Japan, a shift from the ceremonial authority of the imperial court in Kyoto to the practical, martial control of a military leader ruling from Kamakura. While the title of Taishogun had existed before him, it was Yoritomo who first wielded it not as a temporary military commission, but as the foundation of a parallel system of governance, the shogunate. This institutionalization of power under the Kamakura Shogunate in 1192 gave Japan its first true military government, and Yoritomo himself became, in effect and enduring reality, the first shogun of Japan. This transformation did not come through quiet maneuvering or court intrigue. It was born from one of the most brutal and formative conflicts in Japanese history, the Genpei War during 1180 to 1185. The war was a culmination of decades of rivalry between the two most powerful warrior clans in the country, the Taira and the Minamoto. The Taira clan, having risen to dominance under Taira no Kayamori, held sway over the imperial court, even marrying into the imperial family. Their grip on the throne grew so tight that Kayamori placed his own grandson, the infant emperor Antoku, on the chrysanthemum throne. This act, however, stirred resentment across the realm. The Minamoto, long enemies of the Taira, seized the moment to rise once more. The rebellion began in 1180, when Prince Mochūjo, supported by Minamoto no Uramasa and others, issued a call to arms against the Taira, accusing them of corruption and tyranny. Though this initial rebellion was crushed and both the prince and Uramasa perished, it ignited the spark that would become a nationwide conflict. Yoritomo, then in exile in Izu, took up the call and began rallying support in the eastern provinces. The war unfolded across multiple fronts, with battles fought from Kyushu to the capital, and all the way to the Sea of Japan. Early on, Yoritomo suffered a setback at the Battle of Ishibashiyama, a night ambush that nearly ended his campaign. However, he escaped and began consolidating control over the Kanto region, establishing Kamakura as his military base. From here, Yoritomo took a different path than traditional court generals. He focused less on chasing glory in Kyoto and more on building a stable power structure. He appointed military governors, shugo, and land stewards, jitō, to administer provinces and estates, creating a direct line of authority from local warriors to himself, bypassing the court. This quiet restructuring of power would outlast the war itself. Meanwhile, the fighting intensified. Yoritomo's cousin, Minamoto no Yashinaka, struck a major blow by driving the Taira from Kyoto in 1183. However, Yashinaka's behavior in the capital, arrogant, violent, and disrespectful of court customs, alienated the aristocracy. Yoritomo, wary of a rival Minamoto growing too powerful, dispatched his half-brothers, Minamoto no Yoshitsune and Noriyori, to eliminate Yashinaka. In 1184, Yashinaka was defeated and killed at the Battle of Awazu, consolidating Yoritomo's dominance over his own clan. With the capital secured, attention turned to finishing the war. Yoshitsune, one of the most gifted military minds of his time, led a brilliant campaign against the Taira. In the Battle of Ichi-no-Tani in 1184, he launched a daring surprise attack down a steep cliffside, routing the enemy. But the decisive clash came in 1185 at the naval battle of Dan-no-Ura, in the treacherous waters of the Shimonoseki Strait. There, Yoshitsune's forces outmaneuvered the Taira fleet. The tide of the battle turned when a defector revealed the layout of the Taira ships, allowing Yoshitsune to strike at the center. As the Taira line collapsed, many nobles leapt into the sea, including the young Emperor Antoku, who drowned with the imperial regalia in his arms. The Taira clan was annihilated. Victory did not bring peace within the Minamoto family. Though Yoshitsune had delivered the killing blow to the Taira, his growing popularity and independent command raised Yoritomo's suspicions. He defied Yoritomo's authority by accepting court titles without his approval. Yoritomo, ever cautious of threats to his rule, branded him a rebel. After a tense standoff, Yoshitsune fled Kyoto, eventually meeting his end in the northern provinces. This grim episode underscored Yoritomo's priorities: order, loyalty, and centralized control, even at the cost of family. After the final defeat of the Taira, Minamoto no Yoritomo did not march into Kyoto to rule from the throne room of the imperial court. Instead, he remained in Kamakura, far to the east, where he had laid the foundation for a new form of government, military, pragmatic, and rooted in the authority of the sword. It was here, not in the halls of the Heian aristocracy, that Yoritomo built the Kamakura Bakufu, or shogunate, a parallel structure of rule that would outlast both emperors and courtiers. Unlike the fleeting administrations of court-appointed generals before him, Yoritomo's government was not designed for a campaign, but for governance. It was the machinery of power meant to endure. At the heart of this bakufu was a clear, if revolutionary, idea. The shogun would not simply be a military leader, but the head of a fully functioning, independent state. Yoritomo understood that conquest without administration was a recipe for rebellion, and so he began building institutions to manage the realm. The Samurai Dokoro, or Board of Military Affairs, was established to oversee the discipline and loyalty of his vassals, the warriors who had earned land or status through service. This office handled not only military mobilization, but also policing and criminal matters among the warrior class, helping to regulate the conduct of an increasingly armed society. In parallel, Yoritomo founded the Monchūjo, the Administrative Board of Inquiry, a judicial council that resolved disputes, particularly land-related ones, among vassals. This was a direct answer to the chaos that had plagued Japan under the court system. Conflicting land grants, endless appeals, and rulings based on status rather than justice. Yoritomo's court, staffed by knowledgeable officials and judges, began issuing verdicts based on written evidence and testimony. For the first time in Japanese history, warriors turned to law, not blades, to defend their rights. To coordinate the functions of the bakufu and supervise all departments, he created the Mandokoro, or Administrative Board, which oversaw internal affairs, finances, and policy implementation. Together, these institutions formed the core of Yoritomo's government. Unlike the Heian court, which governed through lineage, ritual, and precedent, the Kamakura bakufu governed through appointments, loyalty, and records. Every vassal's duty, landholding, and rights were documented, turning service into structure. Perhaps the most impactful innovation was Yoritomo's appointment of jitō, land stewards, and shugo, military governors, across the provinces. These men were charged with managing estates, collecting taxes, maintaining order, and representing the bakufu in lands previously under the loose control of the imperial court or local magnates. It was a bold move. These appointments effectively cut the court out of rural administration and gave Yoritomo a direct line to the countryside. The warriors he placed in these roles owed their position, wealth, and loyalty to him alone. With these roles, the framework of feudal Japan was laid, a web of personal loyalty tied to land and sanctioned authority. This new form of governance was not without friction. The imperial court resented the loss of administrative control and prestige. However, they could do little. Yoritomo was careful not to openly defy Kyoto. He preserved the emperor's sacred image, even while rendering him politically irrelevant. In official terms, Yoritomo was acting as the emperor's military deputy. But in reality, the emperor became little more than a symbolic figure, while the shogun ruled. Minamoto no Yoritomo's reign also introduced early efforts at legal reform and dispute resolution that laid the groundwork for a new judicial order in Japan. Though primitive compared to later law codes, these reforms reflected a shift from aristocratic privilege to structured, document-based governance. Yoritomo insisted on written documentation, land records, service charters, oaths, and letters of appointment, rather than oral claims or status. This emphasis on verifiable evidence and bureaucratic record-keeping transformed the samurai from mere fighters into legally accountable stewards of their holdings. It also placed them under the reach of a centralized, predictable authority, the bakufu. These early judicial practices would be expanded under his successors, and eventually codified into formal law, such as the Jōai Shikamoku under the Hojo Regency. But the foundation was Yoritomo's doing. He redefined justice not as an imperial favor, but as a structured process grounded in the authority of the shogunate and enforced through precedent, documentation, and reasoned judgment.